Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine this powerful exchange, right, happening in India's highest court. And it's all centered on what a political leader says about the country's military. Our deep dive today tries to cut through some of the noise around this, well, this fascinating legal and rhetorical battle. We want to help you understand not just what happened, but maybe why it matters, and some surprising facts along the way.
Exactly. We're focusing on a pretty recent Supreme Court hearing.
Yeah.
It involves the leader of opposition, Rahul Gandhi, and a criminal defamation case.
Defamation, okay.
Yeah. And it's really a prime example of that tricky balance, freedom of speech on one side, a leader's duty to ask questions, but also the potential impact on, well, national institutions like the Army.
Right.
So we've looked at court documents, the legal arguments, the specific statements that kick this all off, really, trying to give you the key nuggets.
So the biggest news, the latest development, is that on Monday, August 4th, the Supreme Court actually granted an interim stay.
Right, a temporary halt, essentially.
Exactly, on these criminal defamation proceedings against Rahul Gandhi. And this was all connected to remarks he made about the Indian Army.
Yes, specifically things he said about the 2020 Galwan Valley clash with China, and then also a more recent clash, December 2022.
Okay. But what makes this really noteworthy, I think, is how the court reacted during the hearing itself.
Absolutely. There was strong disapproval voiced, going beyond just the usual legal back and forth.
Yeah.
The bench, Justice Dipankar Datta and Justice A.G. Masi, they openly challenged Gandhi's statements. It really set a tone.
And Justice Datta's words, they really jumped out. About being a true Indian.
Extremely striking, yes.
He asked Gandhi's lawyer, Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, about the claim that China occupied 2,000 square kilometers of Indian territory. He asked point blank, were you there? Do you have any credible material? Why do you make these statements without any? If you were a true Indian, you would not say all this.
Wow. It feels like the court's really stepping into something beyond just legal interpretation there, doesn't it? It certainly seems that way. That direct challenge to, well, his patriotism, it really underscores how seriously the court viewed these remarks, like a perceived breach of trust or responsibility towards national institutions.
And they also questioned where he made the statements, right?
Yes, exactly. Why social media posts? Why not Parliament, which they called the proper forum for these kinds of serious discussions?
Now, Dr. Singhvi, Gandhi's lawyer, he defended him. He argued, look, an opposition leader has to be able to raise issues.
Part of the job description, essentially.
Right, and that Gandhi was concerned maybe information was being suppressed. Singhvi actually countered that true Indian remark, too.
He did. He said, well, maybe a true Indian would be concerned that 20 Indian soldiers were beaten up and killed. It's a sharp retort.
It is. But then you have the other side arguing, well, institutions like the military, they're meant to be apolitical, right? So maybe they need protection from potentially inflammatory stuff said in public.
And that's precisely the core tension here, isn't it? The court emphasizing Parliament, not social media, sort of implies that concern for institutional integrity and maybe the decorum of the debate itself.
So to really get what this Supreme Court decision means, we probably need to back up a bit. Where did this defamation complaint even come from?
Good point. It was filed by a former director of the Border Roads Organization, Uday Shankar Srivastava.
Okay.
And he alleged these derogatory remarks were made back on December 16th, 2022. This was during Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra, that big nationwide march he did.
Right, I remember that.
And the specific complaint says Gandhi repeatedly alleged the Chinese army was thrashing Indian soldiers in Arunachal Pradesh.
Thrashing, strong word.
Yes. And that the Indian press wouldn't ask questions about it. This was referring to a clash that happened just before, on December 9, 2022.
And before it got to the Supreme Court, the Allahabad High Court had already weighed in.
It had. They rejected Gandhi's request to quash the proceedings to stop them legally. And Justice Subhash Vidyarthi at the High Court made a really key point. He observed that freedom of speech, well, it doesn't include the freedom to make statements that defame the Indian Army.
So setting a clear limit there.
Pretty clear. And that defamation case is currently sitting in a special MP MLA court in Lucknow that issued a summons back in February 2025.
Right. So the Supreme Court case came from Gandhi challenging that High Court judgment.
Exactly. It was a special leave petition. Now, while all this heated debate about patriotism and free speech was happening, Gandhi's legal team, Dr. Singhvi, brought up something else. A clever procedural point, perhaps.
Okay, what was that? You mentioned Section 223 BNSS.
Yes, that's the one. Singhvi actually conceded, look, maybe Gandhi could have worded his comments better. A bit of an admission there.
Interesting.
But then he argued that under this section, a prior hearing of the accused person is mandatory before a court can even officially take note of or take cognizance of a criminal complaint.
Ah, so a procedural step was missed, according to them.
That was the argument, a foundational step. Even though, interestingly, they hadn't raised this specific point before the High Court.
So a bit of maybe a legal technicality becomes the route to this temporary relief.
It seems so. The Supreme Court agreed this procedural point needed consideration. And that's what led to the interim stay, for 3 weeks for now. So this whole deep dive, it really highlights a critical tension, doesn't it? The role of political speech, especially when it touches on something as sensitive as national security.
Right.
Versus the boundaries of defamation law. And also, where's the right place to even have these debates?
Parliament versus the public square, essentially.
In a way, yes. It's not just about this one legal case. It really speaks to the nature of public discourse in a democracy today.
So thinking about this, what does it all mean for you listening? I think this case is a really potent reminder. What seems like just another political statement can very quickly spiral into a really complex legal and ethical maze.
It really raises a fundamental question, I think. In a world where information, and maybe misinformation, spreads instantly, how do we, as a society, strike that balance?
Balance between what?
Between the absolute need for free expression, for questioning things, and, on the other hand, protecting our institutions and maybe finding some kind of shared national truth, if that's even possible sometimes. It's definitely something for you to consider. These critical conversations keep unfolding. They certainly aren't going away.